What is up, guys? It's your boy, Richard Catholomew, and today we've got some brand spanking new Destiny 2 news, courtesy of the Bungie weekly update that has just gone live, revealing official information. And so, let's get started. Now, first things first, what's been going on in-game this week? Well, actually quite a lot, and that's because a brand new secret exotic quest and mission went live at the Tuesday weekly reset, and you can do it to get the brand new Wicked Implement exotic stasis scout rifle. If you guys want a guide for how to actually acquire this thing, check out my guide. It is linked right up above. And overall, this thing's actually a pretty cool weapon. I also did a video going over a stasis build. You can put together like a build template to make this thing really shine. And oh my goodness, you can, because it causes slow and therefore freeze with rapid precision hits, you can actually lock down enemy combatants, especially more powerful enemies like champions, like you're seeing in the background gameplay. Pretty darn cool. However, there was a little bit of controversy that came with this whole situation. Overall, I do think this quest was pretty good content, leading to like a brand new area within deep dives. I thought, again, it was pretty cool. However, it was also relatively hard, especially compared to past exotic quests. And so there was a lot of people giving feedback saying, this is way too hard, this is impossible with LFGs. And of course, the response to that was a lot of people saying, get good. So obviously that was going a little back and forth there. Overall, my opinion is that, yeah, it is absolutely a little bit of a jump up in difficulty from what we've seen. But is that necessarily a bad thing? We have exotics that are incredibly easy to get. You can just buy them from Xur. And then we have, raid exotics that are very difficult to get. And this falls somewhere in the middle, right? Is it the same difficulty as something like a 0 hour, that exotic mission that came out at this point years ago? I don't exactly think so, or maybe it's somewhat comparable, but I don't mind having some exotics being easier to get and some exotics being more difficult to get. That's kind of the fun and the mystique. You see someone with a Wicked Implement, oh, they beat that final Tormentor boss. That's an absolute doozy. They're actually a pretty decent player, right? Again, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. With all that being said, I absolutely do sympathize with some people because having someone with a divinity in your fire team makes that final boss fight significantly easier, so if you don't have access to that weapon, it's just going to be a harder boss fight, and that's kind of annoying. In any event, guys, let's move on from there to actually, outside of the TWAB, Bungie put out a completely separate article today called Developer Insights, Season 21 Mid-Season Weapon Tuning. So, let's talk about the balance changes coming very soon. So, for weapon archetypes, firstly we have pulse rifles. So, they've reduced the auto-aim angle at 0 aim assist stat by about 10%. Now, this is targeted at PvP, and Bungie says that this is going to impact stuff like the high-impact subfamily with low aim assist the most. It's not going to feel as forgiving for near misses. Moving on from there, for bows, they're actually going to mess with lightweight bows, that specific archetype, saying increase the fixed damage fall-off start distance from 15 meters to 25 meters. They've increased the fixed damage fall-off end distance from 20 meters to 45 meters, and they've increased the final accuracy by about 10%. So overall, just improvements to range as well as accuracy for those lightweight bows. Next up, we have submachine guns. Specifically, they've made improvements to the Shayura's Wrath ADS dynamic reticle. Remember, they're actually experimenting specifically with the Shayura's Wrath so that it has a reticle that will react to your accuracy in real time. So if you jump in the air, that reticle will increase. If you get affected by something that reduces your accuracy, that reticle will actually display that, and it's the only weapon in the game that has it right now. They're kind of using it as a test to see if they want to introduce that to other weapons in the game. But moving on from there, we have shotguns. Specifically, Bungie saying lightweight shotguns have fallen behind their precision and aggressive counterparts, so they've reduced the spread angle of the outlier horizontal pellets by 15%. So, lightweight shotguns, specifically for PvP, just got a buff. Now, moving on from there, for exotic weapons, First of all, we have the Graviton Lance. So Bungie says it's nice to see that's doing well in PvP. However, they're actually going to focus on its PvE damage. So this is actually crazy, dude. They're increasing the PvE damage by 67% to apparently put it more in line with the Revision Zero's Heavy Burst mode that also got a massive buff recently. So that is huge right off the bat. Also, they've removed the extra aim assist provided by the Catalyst to nerf it in PvP, and they've also reduced the damage dealt by the Cosmology Explosion by 40% against players. This is only a PvP nerf. It will not affect PvE enemies. So overall, like, again, a 67, almost a 70% damage increase for PvE, that is insane. Like, that is absolutely worth paying attention to. Try out the Graviton Lance in PvE for sure, especially because, like, remember, exotic primaries, right? They're doing 40% more damage against red bars, and also pulse rifles specifically, which includes the Graviton Lance, got like that 20% PvE damage buff in the last mid-season update. So the Graviton Lance should be schlappin'. Then the No Time to Explain. They're actually going to reduce the range stat by 10, a PvP nerf. Then, for the Fighting Lion, they fixed an issue where the Chimera perk on the Catalyst wasn't applying the buffs to kinetic and power slot weapons. So, should just overall be more consistent. Moving on from there, we have some changes to perks. Gutshot Straight. They've reduced the auto-aim penalty by 37.5%. So Gutshot Straight just got a huge buff. Now for Slickdraw, they've reduced the auto-aim penalty by 33%. Again, big buff for Slickdraw. And then for Target Lock, they've reduced the maximum damage versus players from 40% to 25%, but the damage is unchanged in PvE. So your Target Lock Immortal, well, that just got a big nerf. Now moving on from there, we have a section called Future, talking about Season 22. The substantial shakeup there is coming in the form of zoom. So they're going to reduce the variance between the optimal engagement ranges of our mid-tier weapons, so auto rifles, pulse rifles, and hand cannons, and slightly reduce the average engagement range in Crucible by pulling in the maximum damage fall-off distances of many weapon types. And then they've provided this graph here where you can see the changes to the zoom and range. Now they say there's some other things to look forward to next season. So they have, first of all, hand cannons will be receiving several buffs aimed at improving their usefulness in PvE, including a base reload speed increase and damage increases to minor and major enemies. That's pretty cool. Then Sword Guard is getting a substantial rework and tuning to a handful of exotics, including a balance pass for Le Monarque and some big buffs to Touch of Malice. Then changes to weapon perks, including buffs to Tripod, Envious Assassin, and Under Over. Now they actually go on to say in Season 23, so remember that's 2 seasons away, they do say we know for sure that glaives, and yes, the class exotic glaives, will be getting some substantial tuning, and we're excited to share the details of that as we get further along. For now, we can let you know that we're looking at ways to make them feel better to use without making them annoying to play against. And we're experimenting with things like reducing the delay after firing before you can melee, improving the base projectile speed, and altering how shield energy is granted. If you're a glaive aficionado, we'd be interested to know how those changes strike you, and even if you aren't, we'd still like to hear from you. Well, Bungie, if you want feedback, I think my biggest piece of feedback is just have the element of the glaive actually apply that elemental damage in shooting or in melee. Not doing that provides just so much confusion, especially to new players, that there's like 2 different elemental damage types going on, and some things are affected by damage boosts and others aren't. Like, I think that's just the way to do it. If you have to nerf the melee damage a little bit to compensate, I think it's worth it. Just make things more simplistic. But moving on from there to the brand new information within the TWAB. So first of all, tomorrow, July 7th, is Bungie Day, the 7th day of the 7th month, and there's going to be a huge Bungie Day giving festival where people are streaming, you can win prizes. I did go over that in previous videos, and of course, you can check it out in the TWAB, which is linked in the description down below. But something a bit new is that as part of the Bungie Day celebration, they're actually doing fishing derbies, where Guardians will need to catch as many fish as possible within a given time frame. And here are the different time frames you can see right here. And if you do catch the most fish and get the most points within that time frame, you can get some rewards as well. And keep in mind that this week, like starting at that Tuesday weekly reset, there was the introduction of the lucky perk, which will increase the chances to get exotic fish. So, you know, might want to participate just in case. Even if you're not going for the high score, it actually is a pretty decent idea to take advantage of the increased exotic fish chances, because you actually get exotic armor every single time you turn them in, which is pretty cool. Now, moving on from there, Bungie mentions the mid-season balance patch, which we've already talked about, but they have a separate section called How Do We Balance Weapons? And here's exactly what they look at: usage, kills, win rate, kills per minute, and kills over the expected amount. And they actually say, while we look at everything listed above, we focus heavily on kills over expected, which blends the data into a single easily understood percentage value. Low usage weapons can have highly variable KOEs, but as usage increases and more of the given population uses a weapon, we want to see KOE normalize. And then Bungie actually provides this chart and says this is the kills over expected metrics for the last month for primary weapons in high skill PvP lobbies across all platforms with all input types. As you move towards the right side of the chart, usage time increases. We want to see weapons get closer to the 0% KOE level on the y-axis, which means they are performing as expected. You can see that the Messenger, Adept, No Time to Explain, Graviton Lance, and the Immortal are currently slightly elevated above where we'd like them to be for their current usage levels, compared to weapons further to the left, hence us taking a pass at what may be allowing them to outperform their peers: aim assist, range, target lock, etc. And for example, the Dead Man's Tale was at 60% KOE with a 4.5% usage, which required a hotfix to address that. Now, they do also note that KOE is not a one-size-fits-all metric. Certain weapons, in particular support weapons or weapons like the Le Monarque, must be evaluated separately, as their effectiveness is not tied to their ability to kill Guardians directly. So very cool, Bungie provided this graph, but if I'm reading this correctly, it actually reveals some interesting things. So first of all, the Adept Immortal has a slightly better than average KOE, but the normal Immortal has one of the worst KOE ratings on this entire graph. So apparently all the power of the Immortal is coming from it being Adept, from those stat boosts, from being able to put on Adept range. If you don't have that, you probably shouldn't be using the Immortal, judging by this graph actually. Additionally, look up at the very top, guys. The Sweet Business has an over 70% KOE rating. Like, no one is using it, so maybe that's really messing with the graph here, but it is the highest rated weapon in the game for kills over the expected. So everyone, put on Sweet Business, because apparently that thing is slaying out in the Crucible. That is hilarious. But moving on from there, guys, next week is another Iron Banner, and it's going to be the final week of Iron Banner for Season of the Deep, and the rotation next week is going to be the Fortress Zone Control Mode. Now, moving on from there, Bungie says earlier this year we rolled out the results of the next weapon to get the community voted ornament treatment. With a whopping 45% of the vote, Witherhoard took out both Izanagi's Burden and Thunderlord. The next step is to get with our chosen community artists to start working on some spiffy designs to consider. Well, that time is now. So here's a little preview of the 3 different potential exotic ornaments, and tomorrow I think the voting starts, so go ahead and tomorrow vote for what you want to see the next exotic ornament for the Witherhoard be. And so guys, there you have it. That's it for the video. Hope you enjoyed and found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.